It's coming straight from the horse's mouth. When you see it on Truth Social, you know it's directly from President Trump. That's the beauty of this president and his transparency and relaying this administration's policies to all of you and to the rest of the world.
That is the beauty of this president. If you see it on Truth Social, then you know it comes straight from the horse's mouth. Straight. That's what Carolyn Levitt told reporters yesterday. Now, let's get this straight. You see it from the president on a Truth Social post. That's coming straight from the horse's mouth. That's coming from the not Stephen Miller. Nope. Not some nameless aide down the hall that wandered in and took his phone at the middle of the night and started tweeting Lion King videos. No, my friends, we are assured, blessed assurance. Jesus is mine, and blessed assurance that when you see his Truth Social post, you know that's coming straight from the president himself. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
President Trump.
Somebody slipped and missed a very small part. Now, by the way, again, the takeoff one, I guess, I didn't do it, by the way. This was done by somebody else. This was a retruth. That was not done by us.
Wait, he said he didn't.
Okay.
But he said he didn't do it? But what? Help me. I need direction here. Those two seem inconsistent, Mika.
Yeah,
it's
kind
for
of.
an administration that's never hedged or been. That seems inconsistent, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sort of does. I mean, that was his response after that racist post that showed the, really horrifying image of the Obamas. That literally everybody across the board said, no, can't do. That is racist.
But it's racist. Of course it's racist. But he said he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, today, who knows? Who knows what fun and frivolity is before us today? The president goes down to Georgia today, looking to make a deal. He's way behind and in a bind. But he's going to talk about the economy. He says he's going to talk about the economy, but he is going to be doing that in Marjorie Taylor Greene's former district. So is this going to be about the economy, or is this going to be about grievances? We're going to dig into that. Plus, could be about when, you know what he said, they kill birds. They kill a lot of birds, he says. Plus, we're going to go through new reporting on the Trump administration's failed attempt to prosecute 6 lawmakers who appeared in the video exercising the First Amendment right, saying the same exact thing that the Secretary of Defense had said about Donald Trump a few years earlier on Fox and Friends, when they were saying, hey, guys, listen, you know, as it says in your military guidelines, you don't follow illegal orders. But Jeanine Pirro decides she's going to try to throw senators in jail for exercising their First Amendment rights. I do wonder where people like Jeanine Pirro think this story ends. I wonder how they think they're going to spend their days after the Trump administration. What's going to come? Do they think really that they can literally try to throw senators in jail for doing something that senators always do, speak on current issues and exercise First Amendment right, and nothing's going to happen legally to them or through bar associations or through lawsuits coming back? Do all of these? Do people not understand we're in America and not Hungary? This is Washington, D.C. and not Minsk, Belarus. Do they not? The stupidity, the short-sightedness, the lack of imagination to just look forward to see what happens in 3 years. It's mind-boggling to me, and yet they just keep doing it. They just keep putting their hands on the hot stove, Mika, and it's...
Yes.
I pity them. I actually pity... I know not a lot of people pity these. They're being so short-sighted, all to try to please one man. And when the music stops, things are going to get rough for them legally. Things are going to get rough for them in civil court. Who knows? For a lot of these people that think, they're making a few extra dollars working for ICE, there are a lot of those people probably going to end up in criminal court. And that's what those senators were trying to say also to the military. Hey, protect yourself. Take care of yourself. Don't do anything that's going to get you in trouble. Follow the law. Follow what your military manual says. Anyway, also we have the latest on major developments in the Middle East, where the U.S. military now has the most air power in that region since the 2003 Iraq invasion. Good thing forever wars are at an end. With us today, we have co-host for the Rest of Politics podcast, the BBC's Katty Kay, MS Now's national affairs analyst John Heilman. He's a partner and chief political columnist at Puck. Investigative reporter for the New York Times, Michael Schmidt, is here. Also, the senior writer at the Dispatch and a columnist at Bloomberg Opinion, David Drucker. And the first story tonight, this morning, is former Prince Andrew has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. That's right. Prince Andrew has been arrested. Sky News reports police had been assessing claims against the former Duke of York, who turned 66 today, that emerged in the Jeffrey Epstein files. Police haven't named the person arrested, quote, as per national guidance. According to the Crown Prosecution Service, misconduct in a public office refers to serious willful abuse or neglect of powers relating to the role. Andrew has denied any wrongdoing. Katty, I think it's hard sometimes for Americans to understand London's culture, how tight it is, how close people are, how we see people, royals, and we think, they're far afield. They're rarely seen by people. But this, for you actually grew up in and around, places where Prince Andrew would go, where people that run London go. And this has to be particularly shocking to you, just as somebody from London that grew up with the royals, around the royals. I'm just curious, your thoughts this morning on this extraordinary news breaking out of London.
Look, this has never happened before. We have a prince, the favoured son of Queen Elizabeth, much loved Queen Elizabeth, now sitting in a jail cell with, we're told, a bed and a toilet in the cell. He can be held there for, I think the statutory maximum is 96 hours. People say it's likely to be 12 to 24 hours. And I was just checking, but there has been no member of the British royal family who has ever been arrested. His sister Anne was given a criminal charge for having a dangerous dog back in 2002. That is the closest this comes. A couple of other minor royals have had drunk driving charges leveled against them, but no one in the royal family has ever been in this position. So whether you know the royals or you don't know the royals, this is incredibly shocking and yet almost inevitable. The net was tightening around Andrew. He was no longer a prince. The king, his brother, had said the criminal investigation has to run its course. We will, of course, cooperate, was the language that he used. So now the question is, what happens to Andrew? What's the knock-on effect to the royal family? And I think perhaps most importantly, what does this mean for victims of Jeffrey Epstein, who are seeing that in the United States, there is little accountability outside the private sector, but in Britain, you've had now 3 members of the UK government and a prince facing very serious consequences because of their relationship with Epstein.
And this makes that contrast in accountability as stark as it's ever been when you have the brother of the King of England now sitting in jail. Let's go straight to London. Bring in MS Now international reporter Inez de la Cuetara. Inez, what more are we learning this morning?
Hey, yeah, I mean, a really remarkable turn of events, as Katy just mentioned. This is the first time a member of the royal family has been arrested, at least in recent history. So the former Prince Andrew arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. British police were seen arriving at his residence in Sandringham earlier today. That's according to local media reports. We know, of course, Andrew has always denied any wrongdoing, but this comes after Thames Valley Police had said it was investigating claims that he may have leaked confidential information to Epstein while he was trade envoy for the UK. We did get a statement from police, so they're not naming him. That's typical for British police, but they say they did arrest a man in his 60s from Norfolk. We know that Andrew is 66. It's actually his birthday today. They say on suspicion of misconduct in public office, and they are carrying out searches at other places, other addresses in Berkshire and Norfolk. They say the man remains in police custody at this time. We also got a statement from the Assistant Chief Constable Oliver Wright. He says that following a thorough assessment, we have now opened an investigation into this allegation of misconduct in public office. It is important that we protect the integrity and objectivity of our investigation as we work with our partners to investigate this alleged offense. Now, we know that Buckingham Palace just about a week ago had said that it would be cooperating with this investigation. That is also remarkable. We had heard, the members of the royal family also speaking out about this. The King, the Prince and Princess of Wales putting out statements saying that they were deeply concerned by these allegations, that their thoughts remained with the victims. Of course, we know that back in the fall, Andrew had been stripped of all his royal titles because of his ties to Epstein. And as you guys just mentioned, this comes as there's been this real push for accountability in the UK, whether it has to do with the royal family or members of the government as well, with, two of the British Prime Minister's aides having to resign over the Peter Mandelson scandal. Mandelson also believed to have leaked confidential information to Epstein, the prime minister really fearing for his political future at one point. And we did hear from Starmer just this week, actually. He was asked about, the Epstein scandal, and he said that basically no one is above the law, not even Andrew. And he is calling for Andrew to testify before both UK and US authorities.
Wow. Ines de la Cuetara live from London. Thank you very much for your reporting this morning. John Hellman, to her point, the UK drawing quite a contrast with the US this morning. In those words, no one is above the law. In the UK, that appears to be true.
Yeah, Mika, I had a call a couple nights ago from a solicitor who I've known for 35 years in London, who's been doing law at the highest levels of the UK legal world for pretty much that entire time. He said he's never seen anything like this in his entire adult life and his entire legal career. The scale of the degree to which the British establishment, the political, economic, financial, and obviously the royal establishment have been rocked by the Epstein scandal is unlike anything he's ever seen. And of course, it begs the question you're talking about, which is, obviously people like Peter Mandelson, people like the Prince, former Prince, here are people who appear to be very complicit in this and are facing consequences. How is it possible that in Britain, which is not the epicenter of the Epstein scandal, which is not the establishment in which Jeffrey Epstein mostly moved, he extraordinary degree to which he was an international figure, and people all over the world are caught up in this web. But here at Ground Zero, there's nothing like that. And yes, there has been it's been a very large political story for us for the past 8 months. But to your point about accountability, no one is being called to the carpet in this way, legally or politically. Was a story in the New York Times and Mike Schmidt's paper yesterday that basically said Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, who has been laid bare as having just lied, not just lied, but flagrantly lied, theatrically lied in the most egregious way you could about his contacts with Jeffrey Epstein, had to go in front of a Senate committee and admit that he'd lied. Is our House committee is the word coming out of the Trump administration? No consequences for him. He's doing fine. The president's got his full confidence. It's really quite extraordinary.
Well, it's extraordinary. Yeah. It's also the fact that the Republicans really just don't care. Just don't seem to care at all about who has committed the potential crimes against these young women. There's one or two that have, but other than that, and Marjorie Taylor Greene ran out of Congress by insisting on it. But Katy, you look and see, and Howard Lutnick got caught in lying. Yeah. time and again, lying in just the most egregious way, and yet no consequences for him. You have a man who many people have considered to be at the epicenter of Jeffrey Epstein's rise and his growth, and a guy who'd been around Epstein nonstop. James Comer calls a hearing for him, calls a deposition for him, and allows it to be in his home state of Ohio. Not a single Republican shows up. They're doing a show trial with Bill and Hillary Clinton later, and forcing them to come to Washington when the Clintons asked if they come up to New York. But they're doing that show trial. But a guy who is at the center of all of this, who helped Jeffrey Epstein, who funded Jeffrey Epstein, and not a single Republican shows up at the deposition. They're all Democrats. So it really is stunning how, as John Heilemann said, this is like a bomb that's gone off in London and it's just really shaken the British establishment. And yet in America, the same party that talked about the Epstein files and getting to the truth with Epstein files for years now is the very one covering it up and basically giving anybody that was close to Epstein a free pass.
Yeah, and it's not just London. It's Norway as well. You've got a crown princess who's now under a cloud because of her emails with Jeffrey Epstein. You've got a Norwegian ambassador who's had to resign. You've got a former Norwegian prime minister who's now under investigation as well. In other countries where Jeffrey Epstein had contacts, where he may have had nefarious dealings with people in positions of power, or they may have given him information he shouldn't have had that helped him get rich, people are feeling the consequences of that. But here in the United States, as you say, the fact that no Republicans showed up to that deposition, the fact that Comer didn't show up to that deposition of Wexner, and without Wexner, you don't get Epstein. Epstein doesn't get as rich as he does without Wexner's help all over those years, suggests that if you're a Republican, you're immune from this. We don't think you have any responsibility to bear for this. I mean, it's interesting that you do. We've talked on the show a lot, Joe, about checks and balances in America and the erosion of checks and balances. And you've made the point that there are lots of checks and balances out there outside the formal structures. And it seems that in private life, senior Americans who had relationships with Epstein, even if there's no indication that they had illegal dealings with Jeffrey Epstein, they are feeling the consequences. But either the White House or the Republican Party, and maybe the two are the same thing right now, they are protecting people that they want to protect.
They're protecting Republicans. And so, again, if you did something horrific or if you were extraordinarily close to Jeffrey Epstein, if you got caught lying time and time again about your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, if you're a Republican, this same party that talked about getting to the bottom of the Epstein files, which we've been talking about on this show since 2015, when very few other people, other than Julie Brown in Miami, were talking about it.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a Republican, you're off the hook. In fact, Comer and his committee doesn't even care about the man who started this hellscape. They don't even show up for his deposition. That tells you how hypocritical and how morally bankrupt on this Epstein issue they are. All across the world, gravity still holds, moral gravity still holds in government. You know, J.D. Vance always looking down the end of his little nose at Europe. Well, at least they have shame in Europe. If somebody was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, there are consequences. No consequences here. And again, I keep saying it. Republicans are too stupid to listen to me because they've always been too stupid to do what's in their best interest. This is your own base you're screwing. This is your own base you're ignoring. This is your own base that you're saying, hey, don't trust anything we Republicans say. You're doing that to yourself. And all the money and all the campaign stops by the president, all of that, that doesn't help. That actually makes things worse for you because you're covering up for people who consorted with Jeffrey Epstein. Good luck with that. And still ahead on Morning Joe, we're going to talk to Michael Schmitz and his new reporting about a case against 6 Democrats. It lacked urgency, but then came a swift bid for an indictment. Plus, we're going to be talking to David Drucker about his new piece on how new independents are actually making politics more partisan. He'll explain the hollowing out of the middle in America, certainly in the political parties, when we come back.
There are new details this morning about the Justice Department's failure to secure an indictment against a group of Democratic lawmakers who issued a video reminding service members of their duty to refuse illegal orders. The New York Times cites 6 people familiar with the matter who say federal prosecutors were genial when they first reached out about the case, saying the inquiry was in its early stages and not identifying a specific law that had been broken. Less than 2 weeks later, the Times writes, everything changed. Quote, for reasons that remain unclear, Jeanine Pirro abruptly instructed her team to seek an indictment of the lawmakers. Her prosecutors then faced a decision that many in the department under President Trump have confronted. Comply or resist. They chose the first. That effort, of course, failed last week. And as the Times reports, Pirro now has backed away from the case. It's part of a pattern of prosecutors pursuing weak or questionable cases against the president's perceived political foes. Cases often met with resistance and ultimately failure. Last summer, for example, grand jurors in Washington rejected 3 separate efforts by federal prosecutors to obtain indictments stemming from Trump's law enforcement surge. And we're joined now by Michael Schmidt of the New York Times, who wrote this piece. So, Michael, let's talk about this dilemma, as you put it, where you have someone like Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. attorney there in Washington, who believes she's doing what the president wants. She views the first part of her job, the priority of her job, to please the president. And by doing so, she pursues a case that is a dead end and ends up embarrassed by it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question here that we really don't have a full understanding of is why is it that they go to the grand jury? Do they go to the grand jury because they believed that there was enough evidence here to indict 6 members of Congress? Or did they do that because it was easier to pass the buck off to the grand jury? So instead of standing up and fighting within the department or resigning, do these prosecutors run their own sort of play in a sense where they can say, well, we went to the grand jury and the judicial branch is rigged and that's why we couldn't get a case. What we're trying to say in this story and trying to explain is that this investigation started in a very informal way. And within just a matter of days and weeks, you're at the point of indicting 6 members or trying to indict 6 members of Congress. And in any other time, I know that we're way beyond trying to compare this to anything else. If a Justice Department was going to move to indict 6 members of Congress, that would be a painstaking investigation, a painstaking process. It raises a lot of constitutional issues. You have a different branch of government that comes with a whole set of constitutional issues with it. And the Justice Department would really have to think, okay, well, how big of a decision is this? What does this mean? Would it survive an appeal? Those are things that the Justice Department would take months, if not years, to figure out. And in this instance, you went from the prosecutors calling the defense lawyers and basically saying, look, we're not even in the first inning yet. We're just sort of, getting off the ground here, to a potential indictment in a matter of days. And that is an example of how the Trump Justice Department functions on a day-to-day basis.
So, Mike, here's the question is like that you brought me right to the place that I wanted to talk about, because you guys write that, there's that abrupt shift from casual and isn't it very serious, well, this might not be going anywhere, to moving to an indictment. And you say it's for reasons that remain unclear, right? In the cases of the Jim Comey indictment and the Letitia James indictment, we know exactly there was nothing unclear about it, because we saw Trump's intended to be private but ultimately public messages to Pam Bondi saying, go do this, right? Is it is there no sense of of what the actual TikTok is on how Jeanine Pirro made that change? Like what caused that? It may be unclear, but you guys have a decent sense of what it was, if there was a precipitating event. And B, even if we don't have a sense of it, given history, we can kind of adduce the notion that Jeanine Pirro became convinced through some mechanism that this is what Trump wanted, and that's what caused the abrupt change. She's just doing his bidding like so many other people in the DOJ.
Yeah, look, I think that her office, more so than others, has tried to straddle this sort of like playing federal prosecutor while meeting Trump's demands. And their version of trying to deal with that is different than the Eastern District of Virginia, where they pushed out the U.S. attorney after he refused to even go to the grand jury and bring a case. So what we're seeing here is how are different prosecutors that are politically appointed by the president dealing with this highly unusual thing. Back in the first term, folks in the Justice Department, folks in the White House were stopping this type of stuff from getting off the ground. Folks like John Kelly, folks like Don McGahn. In that instance, the conveyor belt was closer to the president. But because of the fact that there are no John Kellys or Don McGahns around in this instance, you get things that get further out from the White House and they get deeper into the Justice Department. You have someone in Pam Bondi who's much more willing to go along with what Trump wants than his previous, Justice Department officials. And let's not forget, at the time, people were extremely critical of how folks like Rod Rosenstein dealt with Donald Trump. So we're trying to show how much things have changed here and how different they are.
Yeah.
And that's what this story, we think, shows.
David Drucker, I'd love to get your insight on this. Mike and I have talked for some time about how the Trump administration's first 6 months was a lot like my first 100 days in Congress with a contract with America. Everything went great for 100 days. Newt had it all planned out. Then on the 101st day, all four wheels seemed to come off the car at the same time. Seems to be happening here. I mean, you look at how everything seemed to run according to plan the first 6 months. But, this fall, Donald Trump, everything just sort of seemed to explode where he said, we've got to start arresting these people right away. Time's running out. They've been embarrassed on Comer. They've been embarrassed on Letitia James. They've been embarrassed on Lindsey Halligan. They've been embarrassed on Lana Haba. They've been embarrassed now on these 6 senators. I mean, really quickly, just comment. First of all, again, how we kind of I feel like we need to stop right here and say this is extraordinary. You have a president trying to arrest 6 senators in the other party for doing nothing, but exercising their First Amendment rights as senators. That's number one. That's extraordinary and extraordinarily dangerous, and I would say extraordinarily stupid for those trying to do it. But the second thing here is just how ineffective and how inefficient these prosecutions have been and how they are just being spit out by the criminal justice system, whether it's judges or grand juries.
Yeah, look, Joe, I mean, I think part of this is that immediately following Trump's reelection, the Democratic Party was stunned and didn't really know which way it wanted to go in terms of creating a lot of the pushback and opposition that we later saw and continue to see. Right. That's number one. Number two, the president starts out and it's all, wine and roses with executive orders that everybody sort of agrees with or think might be OK. And then the consequences start to come down the pike and people start to experience those consequences. And voters are like, this isn't exactly what I voted for. I think the number one reason the president has so many problems is because he has misread this idea of a mandate, which politicians often do. And he believed, and the people around him continue to believe, at least the way they talk, that, well, you won the election, so everything you've ever talked about doing or ever might want to do, you get to do, and everybody's going to be okay with it. And they haven't really gotten it through their heads that that's just not the case. Had they been able to deliver on reducing inflation and making people feel much better about their personal economic situation, had they not misdiagnosed what the public's appetite was in terms of a mass deportation program and how you go about doing that, people, whether we like it or not, might